Welcome back to Firebox Print Studio. Now I know last time I said we'd be moving on to inking the block, but there's one more detail that we need to sort out, and it's much easier to do before there's ink out everywhere. So in this video we're going to set up our registration. Now registration is simply a way of lining up your block on your paper consistently each time you print. As you can imagine, there's several ways of setting up your registration. Some are more accurate than others. I'm going to show you a few different ways and you can work out which one works best for you. A lot of folk just start off by eyeballing it. It's not the most accurate way of lining up your paper, and once you've burnt through several expensive sheets of paper, I'm sure you're going to adopt one of these other approaches. One of the simplest and quickest ways of getting registration is by simply using a registration sheet. To make a registration sheet, take a sheet of paper that's larger than your printing paper. Now it doesn't have to be rag paper, wood pulp paper is fine. On the paper, mark out the dimensions of your printing sheet. Next, take your block and work out where you want your image sitting on the printing paper. Now you may have heard that there are traditions that dictate the placement of the image on your paper. The space to the sides of your image should be equidistant, and the space to the top of your image should be slightly less than the space at the bottom. I believe that it's your work and you can decide wherever you want to place the image on the paper is fine. Just make sure it's in the same spot on each print. So once you've worked out where your block sits on your printing paper, mark that down so that now you just ink your block up, position your ink block on the registration sheet, then take your printing paper and whilst keeping one side of the paper elevated off the registration sheet, line one edge of your paper up to the corresponding mark on the registration sheet, then line up the adjacent mark and slowly lower the elevated side of the paper down onto the block. For a single colour print, a simple registration sheet is normally more than enough. But because I'm going to turn this into a multicolour print, I'm going to need a registration system that's a little bit more accurate. So what I'm going to show you now is how to set up a registration board. Firstly, you're going to need a rigid board. Here, I'm going to use a piece of MDF. Take your board and just like in the registration sheet, mark out the position of your paper and block on the board. Next we're going to adhere our block to the actual registration board. So I'm just going to take some glue and apply it to the back of the block. I want to make sure it's on evenly. I don't want any huge inconsistencies because that actually might print up in our final work. Once you've got an adequate amount of glue on the back of your block, position the block on the corresponding marks on your registration board. Now we're going to create some registration tabs that'll help to lock the paper in place when we position it. Your registration tabs can be made of any material so long as it's flat, has at least one straight edge and is thinner than your printing block. Here I'm just going to use some old zinc plate which I had hanging around. Firstly we'll start by applying glue to the back of the registration tabs. Next, line up your registration tabs to one corner of where you've marked your printing paper and then one down the trailing edge. I like to use a steel edge ruler to butt the tabs up to here. It just makes it that little bit more accurate. These registration tabs will give you 3 points to lock the paper in when you come to print. Now I'll put the boards underweight to allow time for the glue to dry. Once that glue is dry, we're ready to start inking up our block. But that's for the next video. So until then, take care and I'll see you next time.